For years, the world watched the famous Duggar family present an image built around faith, discipline, strong family values, and unwavering unity. Through television specials, interviews, and reality shows like 19 Kids and Counting On, viewers were introduced to a family that appeared tightly connected and deeply committed to protecting its reputation at all costs. But over time, that carefully managed image began to crack. Behind the scenes, scandals, investigations, and painful accusations slowly transformed the Duggar name from a symbol of conservative family success into one of reality television's most controversial stories. And at the center of nearly every major controversy has been one person, Josh Duggar. Now, renewed public discussions and resurfacing allegations are once again drawing attention to the role played not only by Josh himself, but also by his parents, Bob Duggar and Michelle Duggar. According to growing online speculation and years of public criticism, many observers believe the Duggar parents focused heavily on protecting the family's public image during the fallout surrounding molestation allegations and later criminal investigations involving Josh. Some discussions have even suggested that Josh privately felt he became the central scapegoat, while the broader family structure and decision-making behind the scenes escaped equal scrutiny. Those conversations have reignited intense debate online. Did the pressure to maintain the Duggar brand contribute to years of silence and secrecy? Were certain family members encouraged to protect the family image rather than openly confront serious problems? And has public opinion finally shifted permanently against the once powerful Duggar media empire? For longtime followers, these questions are reopening old wounds and forcing many people to reevaluate years of interviews, television appearances, and carefully controlled public statements. What once looked like unity to millions of viewers is now, for many critics, beginning to look more like damage control. At the same time, supporters of the family argue that much of the online discussion has become overly speculative, emotionally charged, and fueled by internet commentary rather than verified facts. Others insist the public still does not fully understand what happened behind closed doors during the family's most difficult years. What makes this story especially compelling is that it sits at the intersection of fame, religion, family loyalty, public image, and accountability, all under the intense spotlight of reality television and non-stop internet scrutiny. And now, with new conversations spreading online once again, interest in the Duggar family controversy has exploded all over social media, YouTube discussions, podcasts, and entertainment news coverage. Before we continue, it's important to remember that this story involves extremely serious allegations, public court proceedings, media reports, and ongoing public speculation. The purpose of this video is not to sensationalize painful subjects or make unverified claims, but to examine the controversy, public reactions, and complicated family dynamics that continue surrounding one of reality television's most talked-about families. For years, the Duggar family stood as one of reality television's most recognizable conservative Christian families. Through TLC programs like 19 Kids and Counting and later Counting On, millions of viewers watched the family promote faith, discipline, modesty, and traditional family values. At the height of their popularity, the Duggar brand appeared carefully managed and highly controlled. Viewers saw smiling family gatherings, strict household rules, and parents who presented themselves as deeply committed to raising morally upright children. For years, that image attracted a loyal audience and turned the family into reality television celebrities. But behind that polished public image, controversy was quietly building. Everything changed when past allegations involving Josh Duggar resurfaced publicly, triggering intense media attention and widespread public outrage. Reports involving inappropriate behavior towards several girls during his teenage years shocked audiences who had followed the family for years. Suddenly, viewers who once admired the family began reevaluating everything they thought they knew. The backlash spread quickly across television networks, news outlets, YouTube commentary channels, podcasts, and online forums. Former fans began asking difficult questions about how the situation had allegedly been handled inside the Duggar household, and whether warning signs had been ignored for years. As discussions intensified online, public criticism increasingly shifted toward Josh's parents, Bob Duggar and Michelle Duggar. Many critics argued that the family appeared more focused on protecting their public image than confronting the seriousness of the allegations themselves. Old interviews and public statements were revisited repeatedly by internet commentators, searching for inconsistencies or signs that deeper problems may have existed behind the scenes. For many viewers, the controversy never fully disappeared. Years later, documentaries, investigative specials, and online discussions brought the Duggar story back into the spotlight all over again. Streaming documentaries examining the family's rise to fame and connections to controversial religious teachings reignited national conversations surrounding accountability, parenting, and celebrity culture. Suddenly, a new generation of viewers, including people who had never watched the original shows, became familiar with the Duggar family through viral clips, reaction videos, and social media breakdowns. On platforms like YouTube, TikTok, Reddit, and X, debates surrounding the family continued growing. Some users defended certain Duggar family members, arguing that not everyone should be blamed for the actions of one individual. Others insisted the larger family environment deserved deeper scrutiny, especially regarding how authority, discipline, and secrecy may have operated within the household. That division fueled even more online attention. Commentary creators began analyzing old episodes frame by frame, revisiting past interviews, and speculating about what family members may have known at different points in time. Internet discussions often centered on whether the Duggar parents acted appropriately after learning about the allegations, and whether enough was done to protect those involved. As public pressure increased, many longtime followers noticed a dramatic shift in how the Duggar family was perceived culturally. What was once marketed as an example of wholesome family entertainment gradually became associated with scandal, secrecy, and controversy. The family's carefully maintained reputation appeared increasingly fragile as years of criticism continued piling up. And when later legal troubles involving Josh Duggar emerged, national attention exploded once again. News coverage intensified. Social media debates became even more heated. Critics argued the later scandals forced audiences to revisit earlier controversies with fresh concern and renewed anger. For many observers, the newer legal issues did not feel like isolated incidents. Instead, they viewed them as part of a much larger story involving family dynamics, public image management, and unanswered questions that had lingered for years. That growing frustration helped push the Duggar family back into the center of public controversy once again, ensuring that debates surrounding accountability, responsibility, and family leadership would continue dominating online discussions for years to come. As public scrutiny surrounding the Duggar family intensified, a new wave of online speculation began focusing not only on Josh Duggar himself, but also on the complicated internal dynamics within the family. For years, the Duggar brand had been built around unity, faith, forgiveness, and a carefully controlled public image. Viewers were accustomed to seeing a family that appeared tightly bonded through every challenge. But once multiple scandals exploded into public view, many critics began questioning what was really happening behind the scenes. One major point fueling recent discussion involves claims that Josh privately felt blamed by his own parents as scandals surrounding him spiraled out of control. According to ongoing speculation online, some believe Josh may resent how the family handled public fallout once the controversy became impossible to contain. Critics have pointed to interviews, televised statements, and media appearances where Bob and Michelle Duggar attempted to explain the situation publicly, while also distancing the broader family image from Josh's actions. To some observers, those moments created the impression that the family was trying to protect its reputation, while quietly allowing Josh, to become the sole focus of public outrage. Supporters of that theory argue that once media pressure intensified, the Duggar parents shifted into damage control mode. They believe preserving the family's image, television opportunities, and public standing may have become a priority during the height of the controversy. Online commentators have especially analyzed older interviews in which Jim, Bob, and Michelle emphasized forgiveness, recovery, and family healing, while also repeatedly separating Josh's behavior from the rest of the family. For critics, that balancing act appeared strategic. Some argue the parents were attempting to reassure fans and television networks that the Duggar family brand could survive despite the scandal surrounding one family member. Others believe those interviews reflected parents desperately trying to manage an unimaginable public crisis while protecting their other children from further fallout. The debate remains deeply divided. Some viewers feel Josh became increasingly isolated as public outrage grew stronger. They believe the family may have privately struggled with anger, disappointment, and emotional exhaustion, while cameras and media attention intensified around them. Inside such a large and highly visible family, emotional divisions can become incredibly complicated. When scandals affect one member of a public family, every relationship can suddenly become strained. Siblings may feel torn between loyalty and accountability. Parents may face pressure to defend their child while also addressing public criticism. And in families built around strict religious values and public reputation, those tensions can become even more intense. Many online discussions now center around whether Josh believed his parents abandoned him emotionally once the scandals became impossible to contain publicly. Some commentators speculate that he may have expected unconditional protection from his family, especially after years of presenting a united front to the public. But as backlash intensified nationwide, public statements from the family appeared increasingly cautious and carefully managed. That shift sparked even more internet debate. Critics of Jim, Bob, and Michelle argue that their handling of the situation focused too heavily on reputation management and media strategy rather than transparency. They point to television interviews and carefully worded responses as evidence that the family was trying to control public perception during a rapidly growing crisis. Others completely reject that interpretation. Many people argue that accountability belongs solely to Josh, and that criticism directed toward his parents should never distract from the seriousness of the allegations themselves. In their view, any perceived distancing by the family was not blame-shifting, but rather a natural consequence of confronting devastating accusations that affected the entire household. Supporters of the Duggar parents also argue that no public response would ever have satisfied critics once the scandals became national headlines. They believe Jim, Bob, and Michelle were placed in an impossible position, trying to support family members privately while facing enormous public pressure and media scrutiny. Still, the controversy surrounding family responsibility continues growing online. Social media discussions frequently revisit old interviews, reality television footage, and public statements in search of signs that deeper fractures existed within the Duggar family long before everything became public. For some viewers, those moments now appear uncomfortable and revealing in hindsight. Others warn that internet speculation can easily cross the line into assumptions unsupported by verified facts. But regardless of where people stand, one thing remains clear. The Duggar family story continues to spark strong emotional reactions years after the original controversies first emerged. And as debates surrounding loyalty, accountability, and image management continue online, the question of how the family handled its internal crisis remains one of the most discussed aspects of the entire Duggar controversy. As the controversy surrounding the Duggar family continued attracting national attention, increasing numbers of viewers began revisiting old interviews, televised appearances, and public statements made by Jim, Bob Duggar, and Michelle Duggar. What once seemed to many fans like a carefully structured image of faith, discipline, and family unity suddenly looked very different under renewed public scrutiny. Audiences who had followed the family for years started questioning whether serious warning signs had been overlooked behind the scenes long before the scandals exploded into public view. Online discussions intensified as clips from past interviews resurfaced across social media platforms, with critics dissecting the way the family addressed difficult subjects and handled internal problems. For many former supporters, the biggest concern centered around how early allegations involving Josh Duggar were reportedly managed inside the household. Critics questioned whether enough action had been taken during the earliest stages of the situation, and whether the family's deeply structured environment discouraged openness about serious issues. Some argued that the pressure to preserve the family's public image may have complicated efforts to fully confront what was happening privately. As documentaries and investigative specials gained traction online, those conversations only became more intense. Viewers revisited older footage with an entirely different perspective, analyzing moments that once appeared harmless, but now carried much heavier implications in the eyes of critics. Internet forums, reaction channels, and social media threads became filled with debates about accountability, parenting decisions, and the culture surrounding the family's strict belief system. Some former fans admitted they felt deeply disappointed after once admiring the Duggar family for their emphasis on faith and traditional values. Many said they originally viewed the family as an example of stability and moral leadership, especially during the height of their reality television fame. But as more information and allegations surfaced over the years, public trust began collapsing at a dramatic pace. For critics, the issue extended far beyond one individual scandal. Instead, they argued the controversy exposed broader concerns about authority structures within the household, including questions about obedience, control, privacy, and how difficult conversations may have been handled internally. Several online commentators suggested that the family's highly controlled environment may have unintentionally created conditions where secrecy could flourish. Others questioned whether the children had enough freedom to speak openly about personal struggles without fear of consequences or public embarrassment. At the same time, defenders of Jim, Bob, and Michelle argued that many outsiders underestimated the unimaginable pressure the family faced once their private lives became national headlines. Supporters insisted the parents were trying to protect their children while navigating overwhelming media attention, public judgment, and intense scrutiny from millions of strangers online. Some also argued that reality television itself amplified every mistake, every rumor, and every controversy far beyond what most families could endure privately. Because the Duggars spent years building their identity in front of television cameras, audiences developed an unusually personal attachment to the family. Viewers felt emotionally invested in their lives, their values, and their public image. And when that image began unraveling, the backlash became even more explosive. The rise of documentaries and investigative reporting only accelerated that shift. New interviews, insider accounts, and retrospective analysis encouraged audiences to revisit the family's history with far more skepticism than ever before. Conversations that once stayed confined to tabloids or internet forums suddenly entered mainstream public discourse. For many observers, the biggest shock was not simply the controversy itself, but how dramatically public perception of the Duggar family had changed over time. What was once marketed as a symbol of wholesomeness, discipline, and unity had become permanently tied to scandal, division, and unanswered questions. And as those debates continued spreading online, one thing became increasingly clear. The public was no longer just examining the actions of one family member. They were questioning the entire system surrounding the Duggar family legacy, and whether the image presented to millions of viewers had ever reflected the full reality behind closed doors. The public reaction surrounding the Duggar family controversy has remained intensely emotional and deeply divided for years. Every new documentary, interview, court update, or online discussion seems to reignite debates across social media platforms, with audiences continuing to argue about accountability, parenting, fame, and responsibility. For many viewers, the controversy stopped being just about one individual long ago. Instead, it became a broader conversation about the entire family system that existed behind the scenes, while millions of people watched their lives unfold on television. Online reactions remain sharply split. Some critics believe Bob and Michelle Duggar failed to properly address serious warning signs early on and instead focused heavily on protecting the family's public image. These commentators argue that years of carefully managed interviews, television appearances, and public statements now look very different in hindsight. Many viewers revisiting old footage say they notice moments that now appear uncomfortable or overly controlled. Certain interviews, parenting discussions, and public explanations that once seemed ordinary are now being analyzed through a completely different lens by online audiences. Across social media, critics often argue that the parents created an environment where secrecy, image management, and reputation became prioritized over transparency and accountability. Some believe the pressure to maintain the family's wholesome public image may have contributed to larger problems remaining hidden for far too long. At the same time, a large number of supporters continue defending Michelle and Bob Duggar. These supporters argue that the family has already endured years of public humiliation, non-stop media attention, and enormous personal fallout. Some believe the parents made mistakes, but insist they were attempting to navigate an overwhelming situation while under intense public scrutiny. Others argue that internet criticism has become excessive and that outsiders cannot fully understand what occurred privately inside the household. Defenders often point out that the family's religious beliefs, parenting style, and personal decisions have been judged relentlessly for years by both the media and online commentators. This divide has created major fractures, even within the Duggar fan community itself. For years, many longtime fans supported the family because they viewed them as symbols of faith, unity, and traditional values. But as controversies continued emerging, some followers distanced themselves entirely, while others remained loyal to the parents and certain family members. Online communities that once focused mainly on episodes, family updates, and lifestyle discussions slowly transformed into spaces filled with heated arguments about accountability and responsibility. YouTube commentary channels have played a massive role in keeping these conversations active. Thousands of videos analyzing the Duggar family have appeared online, with creators breaking down interviews, revisiting television clips, discussing court developments, and examining the family's public statements over the years. Some channels strongly criticize the parents and argue the family culture enabled damaging behavior behind closed doors. Others take a more sympathetic approach, claiming the public often oversimplifies an extremely complicated family situation. Reaction videos, live streams, podcasts, and online debates continue attracting huge audiences because viewers remain fascinated by the contrast between the family's former public image and the controversies that later emerged. Reddit discussions and social media threads have also fueled ongoing speculation. Entire online communities regularly analyze old episodes, interviews, and public appearances frame by frame, searching for clues about family dynamics that may not have seemed significant at the time. For some viewers, the Duggar controversy represents something much larger than one family. Commentators frequently connect the situation to broader concerns involving celebrity culture, religious influence, homeschooling debates, family privacy, and the psychological effects of growing up on reality television. Many critics argue that children raised in highly public family brands may experience enormous pressure to maintain appearances even during deeply personal struggles. Others believe reality television itself can create unhealthy environments where image and audience perception begin influencing private family decisions. At the center of these debates is the uncomfortable reality that millions of viewers spent years emotionally investing in the Duggar family story. Audiences watched birthdays, weddings, pregnancies, family milestones, vacations, and personal moments unfold on television for over a decade. Because of that long-term exposure, many viewers feel personally connected to every new revelation, controversy, or public statement. Some former fans describe feeling betrayed by the gap between the family's carefully presented image and the allegations and scandals that later surfaced publicly. Others continue defending certain family members while criticizing others, creating even more complicated conversations online. And despite years of controversy, public fascination surrounding the Duggar family has not disappeared. If anything, documentaries, investigative specials, and social media discussions have only intensified public curiosity about what may have been happening behind closed doors during the height of the family's television fame. As new generations of viewers discover the story online, debates surrounding responsibility, parenting, fame, and accountability continue evolving, ensuring the Duggar family controversy remains one of the internet's most heavily discussed reality television scandals. As the controversies surrounding the Duggar family continued unfolding in public, many longtime viewers began questioning whether the family's carefully built image could ever truly recover. For years, the Duggars were presented as a close-knit household centered around faith, discipline, and strong family values. Millions of viewers watched them grow through reality television, interviews, books, and public appearances. But over time, repeated scandals dramatically changed how much of the public viewed the family. What once seemed to many fans like an inspirational success story slowly became overshadowed by allegations, investigations, documentaries, and growing criticism online. The contrast between the polished television image and the darker accusations that later surfaced created a sense of betrayal for many former supporters. Some viewers felt they had been shown only a carefully controlled version of reality, while major problems remained hidden behind the scenes. The damage to the Duggar reputation didn't happen overnight. Instead, it unfolded gradually as older controversies resurfaced and newer revelations kept the family in the headlines. Every new discussion seemed to reopen public debates about accountability, parenting decisions, family culture, and the pressure to maintain a perfect image at all costs. And perhaps one of the biggest questions surrounding the family today is whether the Duggar name itself can ever fully escape the controversies now tied to it. For many observers, the scandals didn't just impact one family member. They changed the public perception of the entire Duggar legacy. As criticism intensified, rumors of fractures inside the family also became a major topic of online discussion. Over the years, fans noticed signs that certain siblings appeared more distant from the larger family structure. Some adult children publicly began creating lives outside the strict environment viewers once saw on television. Others reportedly remained closely connected to the family's traditional beliefs and inner circle. This perceived divide fueled endless speculation online about possible estrangement, tension, and unresolved resentment within the family itself. While many details remain private, audiences have continued analyzing interviews, social media posts, documentaries, and public appearances for clues about where relationships stand today. For younger Duggar siblings especially, many viewers believe the long-term emotional impact could be extremely complicated. Growing up under constant public attention is already difficult, but growing up while family scandals dominate headlines adds another layer of pressure entirely. Some critics argue that the younger children may have had little control over the public image surrounding them while still being deeply affected by the consequences. Reality television fame can magnify private family crises in ways few people fully understand until everything becomes public. Moments that might normally remain personal instead become dissected by millions of strangers online. Every interview, every public statement, and every silence becomes part of an ongoing media narrative. And in the age of social media, controversy rarely fades completely. Years after the earliest scandals first emerged, public conversations about the Duggar family continue resurfacing across YouTube, TikTok, Reddit, documentaries, and commentary channels. New audiences continue discovering the story, while longtime viewers revisit old footage with an entirely different perspective than they once had. For some former fans, the emotional fallout feels especially significant because the family represented more than just a television show. They symbolized a lifestyle and belief system that many viewers either admired or strongly questioned. As the scandals deepened, debates surrounding the Duggars became larger conversations about authority, family dynamics, religious influence, media manipulation, and the dangers of maintaining appearances at any cost. At the same time, others argue that the family has already lost much of the public trust it once relied on. Critics claim that repeated controversies permanently damaged the credibility of the Duggar brand and made any large-scale public comeback unlikely. Even attempts to move forward are often overshadowed by renewed discussions of past events. Still, despite years of backlash, fascination with the Duggar story remains incredibly strong. Part of that ongoing interest comes from the sheer contrast between the image viewers were originally shown and the controversies that later emerged. Audiences remain drawn to stories where public appearances and private realities appear dramatically different. And in the Duggar family's case, many believe that contradiction became impossible to ignore. At the center of everything is a family whose public image changed dramatically over time. What once appeared to millions as a symbol of unity and traditional values eventually became associated with controversy, secrecy, and painful public scrutiny. And for many observers, the emotional fallout likely extends far beyond what audiences can actually see online. Questions surrounding trust, accountability, and family loyalty continue following the Duggars years after the original scandals first emerged. Whether the family can ever fully rebuild its reputation remains uncertain. But one thing is clear. Public fascination with the Duggar story shows no signs of disappearing anytime soon. As conversations surrounding Josh Duggar, Bob Duggar, and Michelle Duggar continue spreading online, audiences remain deeply divided over where accountability ultimately belongs and how much responsibility should be shared within the family itself. For some viewers, the controversy centers almost entirely around Josh Duggar's actions and the legal consequences that followed. Others believe broader questions remain about the family environment, past decisions, and how public image management may have shaped the way serious issues were addressed behind closed doors. Those debates have only intensified as former interviews, archived television footage, documentaries, podcasts, and online commentary continue circulating across social media platforms. What began years ago as a massive reality television success story through shows like 19 Kids and Counting On, has since evolved into one of the most controversial family narratives in modern entertainment media. A family once widely associated with faith, tradition, and unity now finds itself permanently tied to public controversy, fractured relationships, and ongoing scrutiny from both critics and former supporters. The long-term impact of these scandals continues affecting not only the public image of the Duggar family, but also the next generation connected to that legacy. Viewers frequently debate whether the family can ever fully rebuild trust, whether private reconciliation is possible behind the scenes, and how younger relatives may continue navigating the weight of public attention for years to come. At the same time, the internet's fascination with the Duggar story shows little sign of disappearing. Every resurfaced interview, documentary release, or rumored family disagreement quickly reignites discussion across YouTube, Reddit, TikTok, and entertainment media outlets. In many ways, the Duggar family has become a larger cultural conversation about celebrity families, reality television, religious influence, media pressure, and the consequences of living deeply personal lives in the public spotlight. And as more interviews, documentaries, and discussions continue resurfacing online, public debate surrounding the Duggar family legacy is likely far from over. With that said, thanks for watching, and until next time.